So now we're moving to our next speaker. I met Christiane a few years ago when she was first hired to work for the Municipal Transportation Agency in San Francisco. And preceding me meeting her, I had a visit from Mayor Newsom, who actually came to my office and sat for a while and asked me, well, what's up? What's up with you, and how can we make San Francisco better? Well, it was an interesting conversation. I think we shared this, Christiane. I said, well, first of all, you got to get control of the board. A lot of us have runaway boards. You need to get control. Now, I had no idea that the mayor, after he left, who was successful in getting control over it, but would merge it into the Municipal Transportation or Transit Agency. I'm hoping it's working out for you. It's into a bigger entity. I can tell you that maybe in New York City, maybe we should merge the TLC with the MTA. I mean, we're financing it anyway, no? No? Bad idea? Well, we're paying for it, right? The industry is actually being surcharged and taxed to support their competition. I don't know if you knew that. Very interesting stuff going on in New York, thanks to Albany. So Christiane is a lawyer. She has some involvement in government. She's been working for the agency and handling a variety of different matters before she got into taxi reg, including the installation of audible pedestrian signals and endearing herself to the industry, of course, I'm sure, working on the city's towing contract, and also the reworking of the San Francisco's 1940 traffic code into an updated San Francisco code, but that was before she took on the assignment of taxis. So Christiane Hayashi is the deputy director of taxis for San Francisco, and we thought we'd invite her here because, number one, she did basically all of the research from scratch on what we should be doing with the mayor's suggestion that they have a medallion auction and a medallion system. A more difficult political scenario than most cities. In San Francisco, we have a very active drivers group, very active industry, and much to her credit, she's been able to actually do a lot of the research, reaching out to a lot of different cities, and put together a plan resulting in the first medallion auction in San Francisco. So we welcome Christiane, and she's going to tell us about how she got where she is and what her experiences have been with introducing a system to San Francisco. Welcome, Christiane. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Let's see. Where's this magic thing here? Yes. All right. My name is Christiane Hayashi. I was a deputy city attorney for San Francisco for 18 years before I took this taxi job. I think that's why I was chosen, because I understand the very unique context of San Francisco. And in fact, if I had a nickel for every time someone told me that San Francisco is unique in my career, I've had retired to an island in the South Pacific many years ago. San Francisco is unique is the first thing I usually hear before we set about reinventing the wheel, because we want another style of wheel. In this case, however, it's definitely true that it's quite a unique context, and I want to orient you to that unique context before I talk about our new program. So 18 months ago, I came into a system that limits medallion ownership to working drivers. It was a system that was created by a 32-year-old ballot initiative that had set the medallion distribution system in stone. And the moral to that story is don't regulate by ballot initiative. That system included a waiting list for medallions, which I'll go into a little more detail later. The regulatory background is that, like many taxi regulatory systems, it started in the police department, and then when Prop K was passed and it got a little more complicated, there was another ballot initiative to create a taxi commission. And that continued for about 10 years, and it was a good venue for people to communicate about taxi industry, but unfortunately it was pretty much powerless. It did, however, make for very good government TV. Apparently the Taxi Commission was the highest rated commission showing on our SF.gov TV. And then in 2007, Prop A was passed, and as indicated, that brought the taxis into the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency, which handles all transit in San Francisco, all pedestrian facilities, all bicycle facilities, all street stuff, whether it's signal timing or curb colors or speed limits or weight limits, signage, and now taxis. So it's actually potentially a very, very good integrated transportation system, but there have been some rough edges as we try to integrate taxis and the concept of being a regulatory agency into what has been a very traditionally transit agency. We also have an incredibly elderly medallion holder population. It is literally the case. Last year we had a gentleman who received a medallion in January and died of old age in October. And that's not uncommon. The reason for that is that some of the medallions were acquired by investors before the 1978 ballot initiative that prevented transferability, and they've been hanging on to them because that's a very, very good investment. I calculate that those people have earned about $800,000 over the last 32 years, and they don't have to drive or really manage the medallion. Some people are elderly because of the extreme amount of time they spend waiting on the waiting list, which I'll again explain later. Another thing that was unique, and this is very unique, is that Prop A delegated legislative authority from our County Board of Supervisors to the SFMTA Board of Directors. And so that has created an incredibly flexible regulatory environment where we can take legislation related to taxis to the board every 2 weeks for adjustment, which has been very important because we've been starting everything from scratch here. Another thing that kind of set the stage for this situation was the fiscal emergency last year. And so it was a high priority of the city, of the mayor, of the board of directors, and of the executive director to get these medallion sales in place so that we could realize some revenue. And we did our best to accommodate the timing on that. Our permitting system includes permits issued to a driver, to an individual that aren't associated with a vehicle, a permit issued to a person for use with an identified vehicle, that would be the medallion. We also regulate non-standard vehicles. It used to be that, for example, we had motorized rickshaws in Chinatown, and those were something regulated by the police commission that sort of came along with taxis, but it's not really a big part of what we do, although we are looking at jitney service now. Permits issued to businesses that affiliate with vehicles, these are what you all know as fleets, or the color schemes is what we call the companies. We have 31 companies in San Francisco, but we only have 47 square miles. I think probably we have more than enough companies. We also have 10 different dispatch permits, so it's separate. The dispatch permit is separate from the color scheme permit and can actually be a separate business. So in 1932, our world was shaken by Prop K. And Prop K was a reaction to the fact that Yellow Cab, the biggest cab company in San Francisco at the time, and today still, went into bankruptcy. And the corporate medallions they had went into bankruptcy too, and the cars went off the street, and that was a really big problem. And so as a reaction to that, the Board of Supervisors offered Prop K to the ballot that would... It prohibits corporate ownership of taxi permits. Any existing corporate owners, if to the extent that they transfer more than 10% of their assets, would no longer be entitled to hold the medallion. That was an attempt to get the number gradually down, but as you'll see later, it really didn't work. Requiring all new medallion holders to declare their intention to be full-time drivers. Unfortunately, it didn't define what full-time drivers was, so even today I have people who say there is no driving requirement. All we had to do is swear that the time we got our medallion, we really intended to drive, but I might have changed my mind since then. Prohibiting ownership of a permit by more than one person and requiring that only a natural person can get a medallion, and prohibiting the transfer of any permit. 30 years later, we've evolved in the number of permits. You can see in the here. The pre-K permits, the number really hasn't gone down substantially. It's really only by death that we get those back to us. We're trying to bring those down because these pre-K permits are the ones that are not in the hands of working drivers. They're in the hands of investors. And the corporate permits, you can see in 1978, there were 132 of them. We still have 96 today. So we're really looking at how to bring that number down. because it's clear from the legislative intent that those numbers were supposed to gradually decrease, but because of the incredible economic return that these people and corporations are getting, and by the way, all of these corporations were formed when Prop K went on the ballot so that the individuals could hold their medallions as corporations. These weren't otherwise business interests. So Prop K was passed, and the police department permit section, which was in charge at the time, kind of scratched its head and said, well, what do we do with this? And the requirement was that the requirement of Prop K was that the applications for a medallion be considered in the order that they are received. And so first the police commission tried to have periodic public convenience and necessity hearings, and so you would apply for the one that happened in the beginning of the year and you didn't get it. So then you would apply for the one that happened at the end of the year and you didn't get it. So then you'd apply again the next 6-month iteration. But people were complaining that they didn't want to have to pay the application fee every 6 months. And so what ended up happening is that the police department ended up adopting this permanent list. And in 1984, when they made that decision, there were about 300 eligible names on it, and today there are 3,200. And we have, if you look over time, it's not even, I think maybe it should be, but it's not even, but over time, on average, we've issued 25 new medallions per year, and we have redistributed about 50 medallions per year. And at that rate, number 3,200 will get a medallion in about 42 years. And that's a little bit scary, but even the person, you can see from the bottom bullet point there, someone who's halfway up the list will have to wait 21 years from today, and that doesn't count the amount of time they've already been on the list. Number 800 on the list, I checked, has been on the list for 13 years, and it'll take another 10 years for them to get a medallion at that rate. So it's not really a very working system. People have tried to change Prop K over the years and have uniformly failed. There were only 2 ballot initiatives that succeeded related to taxis over the last 32 years, and one was Prop K, and the second one was Prop D, which created the Taxi Commission in 1999. Every other ballot measure was defeated, and the reason for that is that the issue was always presented to the voters as a war between the big corporations and the working poor taxi driver. So in 2007, there was another voter initiative. It wasn't specifically directed at taxis. It was directed at creating a better transit system. It created a transit-first policy in San Francisco. It created it created on-time performance goals for the transit system. It said how you're going to spend the money from transit system, how you're going to get the revenue from the transit system, and it had a little paragraph in it that said, and by the way, if the Board of Supervisors adopts an ordinance, then we can abolish the Taxi Commission and merge it into the SFMTA. And the key feature there was it said that upon that transfer, that the SFMTA Board of Directors would be entitled to adopt regulations that would supersede all previously adopted ordinances. Now, Prop K was an initiative ordinance. And so people who had been supporting Prop K all these years really saw this as a stealth maneuver against Proposition K because of the universal failure of taxi-related reform measures in the past. So, of course, that led to lots of protests, driving around City Hall honking, and this sort of thing. Now, I think that's not an unfair criticism to say that it sort of came by surprise, but when I came in, my goal was to try to have sufficient communication with the industry so that we could all sort of leave the station together as opposed to having this incredible conflict going on. So some of the things that were very challenging in this process was that we came into it right off the bat saying we want money, and we want about 20 million. I think that was the first number we used. And so people would say, well, this isn't reform, you just want money. And that was a difficult criticism to supersede. However, I was also able to point out to everybody in the room that the reason they were all there was about money, and so fair's fair.